It would have been our 8th anniversary this coming October. During the Memorial Day weekend, I discovered that my 28-year-old girlfriend was unfaithful to me. I am a 27-year-old male. My thoughts are quite heavy, so expect a lengthy account. My apologies for the length in advance. I'm inclined to share the events of that fateful night, the subsequent days, and my outlook on the future. Context: my girlfriend, who will probably become my ex soon, and I have been together for almost 8 years. We first crossed paths at a college party and have been inseparable since. Our bond wasn't filled with constant excitement or intense passion, but we shared a deep love for one another. I acknowledge that I wasn't the ideal partner, having battled with alcohol issues, and we both indulged in marijuana throughout college and into our early 20s. Additionally, I've had significant struggles with depression and anxiety. Despite these challenges, I've consistently maintained employment and managed our finances. Arguments between us were infrequent. I've made considerable progress in overcoming these personal issues, achieving sobriety, and striving to be the best possible future husband and father for our family. Over time, we've built a life together, graduating from college, relocating to a major city, and starting our careers. We're the proud owners of 2 dogs, have no children, and reside in a lovely house in a pleasant suburb, where we share the rent. Our lives are deeply intertwined, with her being an integral part of my family and vice versa. We've cohabitated for several years and have joint financial responsibilities. Although we're not engaged, I've had an engagement ring for a few months now. I've held off on proposing because I wanted to address some underlying issues in our relationship first. Attempts to discuss these concerns were met with little to no constructive conversation or action. D-Day. The story of my discovery day begins a few weeks prior to the actual event. One morning before work, I politely asked my girlfriend, whom I'll refer to as Jay, to wash her dishes and tidy up her laundry pile in the bathroom. Jay reacted angrily, questioning how long she had tolerated my own messiness. I was taken aback by her response, but I had to leave for work, so I suggested we talk later and departed. Throughout the day, I collected my thoughts and returned home from work a bit early. We sat down, and I presented several points. I pleaded with her to stop bringing up my past mistakes to win arguments, as I've worked hard to improve myself. Jay's night shift job has been a source of difficulty for us, as it limits our time together, and her recent refusal to switch to day shifts has been concerning. Additionally, she's been excessively sleeping on her days off, leaving her awake for only a few hours, during which she would just watch TV, neglecting her share of household chores. Our intimate life has been lackluster, and despite my efforts to enhance it and discuss her desires, there has been no progress. During our talk, I sought her input on each issue, yearning for a real exchange, but she was unresponsive. Ultimately, she requested time to ponder over what I had said. Since that discussion, I've barely seen her, as she was away on a pre-planned hiking trip with colleagues for nearly a week, followed by a week of us missing each other due to work schedules. On Friday night, Jay inquired if I was interested in attending a birthday dinner for a family friend on Saturday. I had commitments that necessitated waking up early on Sunday, so I was hesitant to agree, knowing she'd likely want to stay out late with them. However, she insisted she wouldn't because she had work the next day. I was skeptical but consented to join her to make her happy. Near the end of our meal, I excused myself to use the bathroom, and upon returning, the inevitable occurred. Would it be all right if I actually went out? I won't be much later, she proposed in front of everyone, prompting me to acquiesce and tell her she was free to choose. Shortly after, I pulled her aside to express my disappointment in her breaking her promise, yet she seemed indifferent. She reassured me she wouldn't stay out late, and I trusted her, considering the group was mostly in their mid-30s with young children. Someone from the birthday dinner even offered to ensure she got home safely. I drove back alone, growing increasingly angry. I composed a lengthy message expressing my hurt over her not returning with me as she had pledged, but I erased it before Sunday arrived. I didn't want to spoil her evening and decided we could discuss it in the morning. I went to sleep. At 2 a.m., I awoke needing to use the bathroom and noticed she wasn't there. No text messages from her either. Concerned for her safety, I checked our shared location, which wouldn't load, heightening my worry. When I called her, she answered, "Hello. Hey Jay, where are you?" I inquired. "Oh, I chose to stay at a family friend's house," she replied. This wasn't alarming in itself, as the family friends were a long-known married couple with kids, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for her to stay there after an evening out. However, my worry quickly reverted to anger as she had not only lied about returning early but also failed to inform me of her change in plans. I insisted she take an Uber home so we could talk, despite her irritation. After half an hour without an update, I checked her location again, which now worked. To my surprise, she wasn't en route. She was at an unfamiliar house. I phoned her again, questioning her whereabouts and why she hadn't left yet, as her location showed her at a strange house. She maintained she was at the family friend's and was puzzled by the location discrepancy, claiming she was definitely there. Despite feeling uneasy, I didn't jump to conclusions, considering it might be a technical glitch, although it seemed unlikely given the distance and the static nature of the location signal. I confronted her about her continuous dishonesty, about going out, the duration of her absence, and the supposed Uber she had called 30 minutes prior. She claimed the Uber would arrive in 4 minutes and promised to call once it picked her up, preferring not to argue in front of the family friends. I monitored her location, expecting it to correct itself, but instead, it moved consistently with her being picked up from the unknown house. She was finally on her way home. I waited downstairs for her arrival and immediately inquired about her night. She mentioned going to a bar and then to the family friend's house. When I asked what they discussed until 2:30 a.m., she casually mentioned they sometimes stay up late to chat. I found it implausible for a couple in their mid-30s with young children and jobs to be awake that late just for conversation. She then revealed they had been talking about me, labeling my behavior that night as psychotic. Although I was angry, I knew I hadn't acted irrationally. I hadn't raised my voice or made any accusations. I insisted that she return home immediately, and I believed I had good reason to do so. She went on to mention their conversation from 2 weeks prior. She accused me of attacking her and ganging up on her without cause. I was taken aback by her accusation. I was under the impression that I had managed the previous conversation with considerable maturity. In fact, I was quite pleased with myself for taking the time to collect my thoughts so that I could present them calmly when I arrived home. At that moment, however, I began to doubt myself. I questioned whether I had unfairly targeted her without justification. I wondered if my approach had seemed aggressive to her. I considered that perhaps the conversation felt one-sided because she was unwilling to participate in any meaningful dialogue. I questioned why she could discuss our relationship with others but not with me. Nevertheless, the matter remained unresolved as she declared she was finished talking and headed to bed. I pleaded with her to offer me some form of response, even if it meant she had to shout at me. I was desperate for any communication. As she ascended the stairs, I inquired about why her location showed her at that particular house. Her explanation remained unchanged. She claimed ignorance and stated she was at a family friend's home. I expressed my desire to trust her, but I also acknowledged the evidence of my own eyes, which contradicted her story. I was willing to accept any reasonable explanation that could account for her presence at that house. She reiterated her stance, stating that if I couldn't trust her, then our issues were far more serious. Despite my reservations, I chose to trust her and went upstairs to join her in bed. A small voice inside me knew what I had seen, but I convinced myself she wouldn't lie or be unfaithful. As I was drifting off to sleep, an idea struck me, and I sat up to suggest checking her Uber receipts as proof of her honesty. She appeared to be sound asleep, though in hindsight, she was likely pretending. I retrieved her phone from beneath her pillow and unlocked it, only to discover a text conversation with someone I'll refer to as Jake. The exchange consisted of just 2 messages, one from earlier in the evening, a typical message sent after exchanging numbers, and another that she had forgotten to send, confirming her safe arrival home. Even then, I didn't jump to the conclusion of infidelity. I assumed the person was someone from the dinner who had also stayed at the family friend's house. However, the Uber receipt confirmed she was picked up from the location in question. I woke her up to confront her about being at that house, seeking an explanation for what had occurred. Her response was simply an acknowledgement that it was exactly as it appeared. I demanded to know how she could betray me in such a way, but she offered no substantial reply. Despite my insistence on understanding what transpired that night, she remained typically uncommunicative. I declared our 8-year relationship over, lamenting that she was meant to be the mother of my children. Only when I stated it was over did she exhibit any sign of regret. The scant information she provided was that this was her first transgression and that I had caught her before anything had happened, though I was uncertain whether to believe her. At this point, whether or not I believed her seemed irrelevant. About a month earlier, she had informed me she had HPV, assuring me that it could be contracted even in monogamous relationships, which seemed plausible based on my research, so I didn't dwell on it. Now, however, I was left questioning that information. The subsequent hours were filled with a repetitive cycle of my asking how she could do this and her apologies, promising to make amends. Eventually, it was 6 a.m., and I had to leave for the plans that had brought me home early the previous night, a 7 a.m. tea time. In hindsight, it was fortunate that I had a full day scheduled with friends, followed by time at the shooting range with another friend who was teaching me the basics. These were close friends, and I shared the entire ordeal with them. They paid attention to my endless chatter throughout the day and gave me all the time I needed. As soon as I realized Jay had departed for work, I made up my mind to return home. Having been awake since 2 a.m., I was completely worn out. I don't manage to fall asleep until midnight, staying awake for roughly 22 hours on the most terrible day I've experienced. The period that followed wasn't eventful, but the pain persisted. It's a profound and unrelenting soreness, not the crushing pain you feel when a loved one passes away, but a steady, deep throb. I've reached out to additional friends, all of whom have offered incredible support. I am indeed fortunate to have such a strong network of support. The individuals I really wish to speak with but lack the bravery to call are my parents. For reasons I can't articulate, I feel somewhat ashamed. I also realize that once I confirm to them that my relationship with Jay is completely over, they will never look at her the same way again, and she will be aware of it. The thought of enduring that kind of strain for the rest of my life is unbearable. While I'm almost certain the relationship is finished, declaring it with 100% certainty is difficult. She has been a part of my life for 8 years, which signifies a major shift in my current life and the future I had envisioned. Work has been challenging. I haven't accomplished much this week. I've been keeping myself occupied by chatting with colleagues. However, today I found myself alone in the office as it seemed everyone else chose to work remotely. It wasn't a pleasant day, as I found myself dwelling on the weekend's events and spiraling into negative thoughts. Up until now, I was oddly coping, but being alone for the first time since it happened has allowed all the emotions to surface. Looking ahead, I'm uncertain about what lies ahead, but I have a few immediate plans. First, get an STD test. Second, start therapy. And third, speak with my parents and possibly visit home. I also need to have a conversation with Jay. Even though I stated repeatedly that it was over on the night everything unfolded, an official end still needs to be declared. Since that night, I haven't seen Jay. She's been at home after work on Sunday and Monday nights, seemingly not leaving the house. Meanwhile, I've been spending as much time away as I can, and on the rare occasions I am home, she stays in the guest bedroom. I haven't found the strength or the will to speak to her. What frightens me the most is the situation with our living arrangements and the dogs. Although one dog is clearly mine and the other is clearly hers, there's a part of me that fears she might do something irrational. I'm no longer certain of what she's capable of. We're bound by our lease until February, and upon reviewing it, it seems we have no choice but to stay put. She has relatives in town where she can stay, but I have no alternative place to go. It would be a significant financial burden if she decided to stop paying her share of the rent, though it wouldn't completely ruin me. The best-case scenario appears to be living as roommates and avoiding each other for the next 8 months, a rather dismal prospect. Once we part ways, we'll face the task of dividing our possessions, including the nice furniture we own together. This furniture likely won't fit into the smaller apartments we'll probably move into after this, making everything so uncertain. Conclusion. If you've read this far, I appreciate you lending an ear. Simply putting this into words has been a therapeutic exercise for me. I'm receptive to any advice on how to move forward, as nothing in my life has equipped me to handle a situation like this. Edit. I'm grateful to everyone who took the time to read and comment, as well as those who reached out via direct messages. Although I may not have replied, I read each message. While support from friends and family is wonderful, it's also beneficial to receive input and advice from those who are more detached from the situation. Many responses have made me confront some difficult realities about the relationship I was in. After considering the comments and discussing with people in person, I'm prepared to shift from being 99.9% sure to 100% certain that it's over, and it probably ended longer ago than I'm willing to acknowledge. I also want to address the more frequent comments and questions I've received. Has she attempted to reach out to me? No. Throughout the week, she sent me a few basic messages to let me know she had already fed the dogs before I arrived home, ensuring I wouldn't feed them again. Yesterday, she let me know that she would be staying elsewhere at least until today. Beyond that, we haven't had any other communication. This isn't the first instance of her being unfaithful to you. Perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't. Either way, it makes no difference to me. I have no interest in discovering the extent, the identity of the other person involved, or the timing. Gaining that information would only occupy more space in my thoughts. This situation doesn't merit any more of my mental real estate. You are extremely gullible. Yes. That has become quite clear to me now. I don't wish to become overly skeptical in the future, but I will take from this a valuable lesson about asserting my boundaries and recognizing the warning signs when someone disregards them. You need to remove her from your home. Ideally, I'd love to do just that and am planning to take steps in that direction. However, since we're both signed on the lease, I'm uncertain about my options if she refuses to leave. I also realize that since the utilities are in her name, I would need her cooperation to continue living here in her place. It's going to be tough, but I'm confident a solution will be found. With a solid support network and sufficient savings, I'm not at risk of ending up homeless. Make sure to record your conversations and install cameras. I don't want to believe she's capable of the malevolence suggested by these comments. Nevertheless, I recognize the importance of safeguarding myself. Inform your parents. I definitely will, and very soon. I'm not concerned about how they'll react. I think I just needed some time to process everything on my own. First and foremost, I want to express my profound regret that you're experiencing this. The hurt and sense of betrayal you're dealing with are both genuine and justified. You've faced numerous challenges in your life, and this is yet another hurdle that I'm confident you'll overcome. It's crucial to remember your history of resilience. You've successfully navigated through problems with alcohol, marijuana, depression, and anxiety. These past challenges will add to your ability to handle the current situation. Your efforts to move past these issues speak volumes about your character and determination. In addressing your girlfriend's unfaithfulness, maintaining open communication is key. You've been attempting to engage in these tough discussions, and that's significant. Feeling upset and angry about her lack of honesty with you is also completely valid. The betrayal indicates the depth of your commitment to her, and healing from this will take time. It's perfectly fine to take the necessary time and treat yourself with kindness. During this period, it's vital to be surrounded by friends and family who support you. Your intentions to get an STD test, seek therapy, and return home are all positive steps forward. These actions demonstrate that you're looking after your well-being, seeking expert advice to work through your emotions, and reaching out for the comfort of a familiar setting. Lastly, it's normal to feel frightened about what the future holds. This unexpected situation naturally brings uncertainty about what comes next. However, you're not facing this alone. Seek guidance, rely on your support network, and take life one day at a time. You're more resilient than you realize, and you'll emerge from this even stronger. Now, let's consider a couple of comments from the community. Switchboard friend begins by saying it seems you've moved beyond her. You've turned your life around and are making very sound and constructive decisions. She hasn't made the same progress. For a relationship to work, both partners need to be on equal footing. Topo 241 comments, expressing regret for your situation. That 99.9% certainty needs to become 100%, given that she lied to you multiple times and it's clear from the context you provided that her infidelity wasn't a one-off. Reconciliation is impossible if the person isn't honest and remorseful, which she isn't. Had you not caught her that night, you would still be living in deception. I firmly believe that it isn't beneficial for your well-being to remain in a living situation with her for 8 months, and despite the potential financial hardship, unless it would devastate you, I highly recommend asking her to move out or considering moving out yourself. May you discover tranquility.